This was their 5th straight split, with some roster changes, of regular season excellence. But they never won a title. They, in every split, win a minimum of 11 games, double-digit wins in the round-robin portion. By the way, 13 was the minimum in other splits, so actually even that was going against them. Not as good as the other splits, seemingly. It's actually a very competitive year if you look at it. They make the top 3 every single time in the playoffs in those 5 splits. People forget that. They don't just make a semi, or they just make playoffs and do nothing. That's like, they always make top 3. They're 3rd, 2nd, and now they've been 1st. So 5 times in a row, they were going to be top 3, but everyone thinks they're going to be top 3 or 2nd again. They'd made 2 finals. Obviously, in season 11, they made the spring final, almost won that one, almost 3-0'd it. Then in spring this year, they came from the upper bracket, the favourites, but then G2 aced them with that amazing low bracket run, draft gap, everyone stepping up, Caps being a monster, but they'd never won the title. And unfortunately, if you've never won the title and you've been in as many positions as they have to, you're chokers, you're losers, you lack a true superstar. You look at the rest of the league, they've got Caps, they've got Humanoid, they've got Perks. These are the people that are going to carry you through the big match and win. Who have they got on Rogue's side? Larssen. That was the logic, right? That's why everyone argues against me. If you think he's a traitor, Froggen, we thought Froggen was overrated anyway. That was the whole jazz, right? And so let's be real. For me as well, Rogue was going to have to win it to prove it, because they've been there too many times. They have to win it. And then you look at how the split played out. It wasn't even their best split. They only won 11 games. I say only because how many other teams would that be like their best split or a really good split or more than adequate split? Shows how the Rogue expectations are so different because of what happens in the playoffs. Like, if you're almost any other team, including teams that will be contenders to win the championship, if G2 would win 11 games, no one would be picking against them like, oh, only 11 games in the split. But because he Rogue and he didn't even win the regular split, the logic was like, right, no way you're going to win the playoffs then. I think basically people now want Rogue for real to just ace the whole regular split with no losses. And definitely you can't lose to anyone, because if you lose to one of the top teams, which should be reasonable, then you'll just show that they'll beat you in the playoffs as well. You can't possibly win. If you lose to a bottom team, even the G2 can do that all the time. Well, God forbid, if you can't even beat them then, you're never going to win. So the logic is you have to actually 18-0 if you're Rogue, if you hadn't won this split. Otherwise, no one will give you a fucking chance in the playoffs to win. That's where we've come to now at this point in times. Because yes, look, let's be real. They do always lose a key game or two every split to either G2 and or the dominant team in the LEC. Could be a Mad Lions, could be a Fnatic, whoever it might be at that point in time. And it does make you wonder. It makes you think, well, if they lost that one there, it was kind of the big marquee, the equivalent to like the NFL or NBA televised game, like the Christmas game between the two big teams. Yeah, it does make you think, what would happen in the finals though? They can't hold up under this one where they sort of know they have to prove it to people. But even so, like I say, every team loses games. Let's not be silly. No one's 18-0 in these splits since Fnatic did in Season 5 summer, in what's quite frankly not the strongest time in the league. Then consider this. They were 1 game behind both Mad Lions and G2, who both everyone was hailing as the best. Oddly, Mad Lions were getting coaching staff of the split. 4 of their players all LEC. Niski the MVP. G2 has Caps, Yankos. They just won the last split. They had the 24-game win streak. They had the clutch players under pressure. Everyone was going like, that 1 game, yeah, that's great for them. On the road, not that. Wasn't a good enough split for them. So, yeah, this was overall a lesser split in Rogue history. Because I would even say I think there was some fluke wins. Like the first one over Mad was a bit BS. I think individual players weren't quite as monstrous as they were in last season's. Larssen and Trymbi especially I didn't think were so sick. I thought Malrang had a lot of dodgy games. It wasn't an MVP split for Larssen. I've pointed out in the past, I think he could have been MVP many other splits and was always in contention for best mid, but people just don't know that style or don't appreciate laning and farming anymore, so they just say against it because he's not playing pop-off champions. By the way, in some ways you'll notice, as Larssen goes, so Rogue goes. Larssen is the spirit animal of Rogue, in my opinion. So I don't know, what would the fucking Latin, like Gingericus Farm Mage Lanicus, like no Romicus if you're a hater. And obviously I did a video on him as a player. I've tried to build up this point that, yeah, maybe he was a little bit passive or he was a choker in the past, but he's overcoming it. You see how he grows split by split and series by series, and he levels his champion pull up and then adapts, and he clearly has this like ballsy attitude. I did an interview with him where he believes he'll be a champion and he is stubborn about that stuff. Like, there's a lot there to like overall, right? So you come to playoffs, and because they didn't even win the regular split, they had no chance. Nobody gave them any chance. Now, I did pick them to beat Mad Lions, but they did it in 5 games, and you know what? They showed some good things. They started to show a bit of aggression in terms of adapting in the draft, a little bit of willingness to go away from comfort and play more dodgy stuff. You also saw the old pocket pick come up for comp of Kate. I'm pretty sure it was in that series. That's one that you saw would be a big deal in the rest of the playoffs and for Comp's career. But in the upper bracket final, they got wrecked by G2 easily. Weird draft choices with like Jarvan bans, where they're the one that wants the Jarvan all the time. Some weird ideas about what they were doing in top lane and what they were allowing in the bot lane and what they were scared of in the bot lane. And they essentially just looked like they mentally checkmated themselves before they got in this series. And then G2 just did what they had to do. And as a result, I think G2 came in this final thinking, this is going to be easy, mate. There's a crowd as well. These guys have never won. Now they're in the low, like, it's easy. And they had to play Fnatic yesterday. Easy money. So then, consider this. In the low bracket, they had no chance after that, right? Because Fnatic's looking dangerous. Fnatic can now play hard through bot. Upsets carrying games look like the best ADC. The draft is looking more interesting and ballsy from Yamato. Like, he might even one game dare you to play Yuumi when maybe it's not even like the right champion or the best comp for you, just so he gets the advantage. And you know, if you don't pick it, then you'll look like an idiot because it's supposed to be so OP. So they were doing all sorts of interesting things. I thought Yamato, Wonder, and Upset basically carried, and Razork, those are the players, in my opinion, who carried Fnatic through those playoffs. And if it wasn't for people like Wonder, I don't think they would have been in the playoffs. So I'm amazed by some of the people turning on those players. And now, people are acknowledging they did bad, but finally, we've sort of had some accountability for Humanoid and Hillsong, haven't we? I thought this was a very convincing win in the series. Bearing in mind, the first game, they were in a great position, they had that fuck up. They were very willing to fight and re-engage. This is why I already could see this is a different this is a different rogue, and this is one that could potentially be a champion. But obviously, we made the predictions for who's going to win, if people don't know, before the Fnatic match. That's when all the shows did it, because it was the same weekend they were playing, right? It's one of the reasons I also went so big on my bet for the final, even though I thought G2 should still win. I thought 4-5's too mental. So they had this very willing to fight and re-engage. That's not rogue, typically. They're the one they play into you. You play into them. They just farm up. They just look for the objective. They're trying to play a bit more safe. They get a nice, proper team fight. They were willing to be messy. They were willing to... The joke is, if you took the nameplates off Rogue in the low bracket match in the final, people would think it was an LPL team, especially the final. They looked super aggro. They looked super like they didn't care about losing a man as long as it meant they could win the fight and win the war of attrition. That's the opposite to what Rogue was. Rogue was the LCK attack team that just backs off when you catch someone and go, oh, well, wait for the death timer. Like, maybe like contest the dragon, but they take it and then I'll go back to farming, lads, and look for another time later. And that was who they used to be. So in this particular series, you had Trymbi and Malrang horny as fuck for the fights. You had Comp DPSing like you'd want him to. You had Larssen kiting around, just blowing people up on the outskirts of fights where they step forwards. And then you had Odo, who's just like a man possessed, solo killing, going balls deep, tower diving. Oh, you could see this was a different Rogue just from this weekend. In the final, they were supposed to have absolutely no chance. Every narrative went against Rogue. Think about it. The old enemy of G2's there, including Caps, Monster Player. They have the mental block against them, don't they? The mental block from spring finals, from the upper bracket final here. So they're 0-6 in their last playoff games against those guys. They're in a stadium. Look, even being on like stage on the spring one's supposed to be activating Caps. Now, surely in a proper stadium with fans, full of G2 fans, surely Caps and Jankos are going to get buffed here. Meanwhile, it's going to be a nerf to the Rogue guys, and they're going to sort of fail, right? And Larsen's in front of his home crowd. You're going to think, oh, that could be good. That could make you more scared if you're a choker. That could make you think, oh, bloody hell, what's going on? I've seen people who are amazing players lose in front of home crowds for exactly that reason. Then consider, in those big playoff series they won, Mad and Fnatic, they lost game one in both times and then started draft adapting. That is classic Rogue. And if you're going to give G2 the first game for free and then start adapting to their draft, then they're going to be able to put you under pressure. They're going to be able to pop off game from Caps the next one. Or Jankos gets like a clean like fucking save on a dragon or something. Like, oh, the amount of things that can go wrong for you when you're behind the 8-ball playing against those teams that are considered clutch, that have won before, that know that you're not clutch and know that you're a bit of a choker. They can just use that against you. But I think you saw from the draft in game one, this was a totally different Rogue. Larssen LeBlanc pick. Should we just talk about that for a second? Now, Cadril in the Fnatic series on the LEC broadcast even said, like, a line, like, to point out how good Larssen is. Like, yeah, he's only playing the majors. That was his line, right? He's picking LeBlanc in game one of a finals. And by the way, it was clean against Caps' Ari. Remember, Ari is the nightmare pick from the spring finals that he bodied everyone with. Funny, by the way, because when Caps was playing these kinds of picks, like the Thorin mages in spring and right before the lower bracket run, everyone was fine with that because Caps were, they were just good picks for lane and he wasn't farming up. It's not his fault he lost. Like, man alive, the expectations and standards are different for these players, right? Then consider they have the Kalista Soraka bot lane pick. This is ballsy as fuck right there. They were aggro fighting the whole game. They were willing to re-engage all the time. They almost had like a pick style where as soon as they got anyone went in and hit someone, everyone would just converge in on them. Insane follow-up on everything Malrang and Odo did. No man left behind. We don't just abandon them. We go back, we find other angles, and we flank back, and we teleport back in, and we hold them off for a while, then we fight them again. This was some really amazing. It was so exciting. It's a rogue that you've never seen before. And as a result, even having a Draven on Flackhead didn't rattle them. Even when he got a cash in, it didn't rattle them. Yet meanwhile, same game, Jankos is on Jarvan. Caps, it was on the Ari. This is every signs here that like, oh, you know, at any moment, surely like G2 could come back. This could get dangerous. Rogue could get scared. They'd given the picks over. It didn't matter. This was a good draft for G2, but it didn't fucking matter. Rogue was the better team, and they basically stomped the first game. In game 2, Odoamne picks Renekton. You know when Odoamne does a Renekton or a Jace pick, he might even get kills and do well early, but they never know how to play around him. Didn't matter in this game. He was so ballsy and aggro, and they weren't willing to leave a man behind, that it was a fucking banger pick in this particular game. Malrang had the Jarvan. Larssen picked Ari himself to show, you know what, I can win the Ari side of mid lane, mate. Comp had his Caitlyn pick, and trymbi went for Tahm Kench. And because they did this spellbook like teleport, whatever, they had like almost like a globals comp. Like again, this is not rogue style. Meanwhile, again, look what you've got on the side of G2. Caps goes to Lissandra. Sure, it's not the big pop-off champion, but he's going to be good on it, and he was able to get catches. And Broken Blade, who's supposed to be the other carry, they play through top and mid, remember, has his Aatrox. This is his time to smurf, to beat up Odoamne's Renekton, get ahead in lane. Caps like sort of neutralises Larssen, and then you get some catches and you win the game if you're G2, right? This was not, as a series, a stomp by Rogue. This game and this third game, G2's in it. There's a point that obviously they almost won this game, but like Malrang and a mixture of them not going aggro, just focusing the towers, meant that they didn't end the game. So I actually think this was one where I actually think this is the most impressive part of the win by the guys from Rogue, because old Rogue in the mid game would have just fallen off, not been too aggressive, farmed up. Instead, what did they do? They kept re-engaging. They kept winning re-engages. If G2 engaged into them, they took the fight. They took it maybe a little bit back in the territory, but then they would fight, and they would fight to the death, and they were willing to gamble and roll the dice if the guys from G2 wanted to gamble like that. And that was an amazing series, in my opinion. A game. The way that they won this game, it just showed like there's a level of heart and grit and ballsiness. Like, here's the thing, they're not just going to be, in the UFC analogy, put against the fence just trying to defend themselves. They were swinging back. They were in a phone booth just throwing haymakers, getting some landed on them themselves, but fucking hitting back. Like, this was some ballsy ass shit, boys. Then you come to game 3, where because they've won that second game, now everyone's going to say what G2 would win. If we'd have won that game, it changed everything, the dynamic, and so, yeah, but here's the other thing. Logically, you're supposed to still have maximum belief that you're going to beat Rogue anyway, right? Because they're the team that choked from 2-0. They're the team that can be reverse swept. They're the ones that should have won a title a year ago in this scenario, and they did it, right? But then you saw in game 3, again, let's just start in the draft, shall we? This is where I knew, Rogue is in their heads completely. Because you get the respect ban on Renekton for Odoamne. He's gone from, like, we'd want him to pick it to don't let him pick it in one game. You had the other 4 bans were 4 ADC bans from G2. What that was telling you right there was, we cannot have comp on anything strong in this meta, or he is going to tear Flackhead and the rest of this game up and carry these fights. Then, you look what they got on the side of G2. Flackhead gets the Zeri that's supposed to auto-carry. He gets the Soraka for Targamas. That's been doing so much work for trymbi in these playoffs. It's looking OP as fuck. Surely they're going to win all these team fights. Broken Blade goes for the Hail Mary. He wants his Fiora. You know, I play that champion. One of the few Westerns who does. Fuck around and find out. Maybe I'll win this game. Larssen has just a mage, just the Azir. And Comp carries the whole game on Sivir. This just shows you it's a different Rogue. They don't even need the same kinds of drafts. They win all kinds of ways, in every possible way. They win in laning, team fighting, objectives, re-engages, skirmishes, fucking position by position by position by position, seemingly shot calling, guts, but everything went to them. Everything went on their side. And G2 still played well in game 2 and game 3. By the way, if Fnatic had made the final, I think not only does G2 win, but I think even if Fnatic had played their best, I think this would have been 4 or 5 games. Like, I think it would be very hard for Fnatic to just sweep them and wreck them out. But Rogue really had an amazing performance in these finals. An inspired performance, you could say. Now, what does this mean for the players? Because for Larssen, I always thought he was an elite mid, but he's definitely an elite mid now, motherfucker. He could have been MVP of those finals in terms of how he carried and what he did against Caps, one of the all-time greats, was supposed to be at the peak of his powers. Everyone's going to say because he lost now, he isn't. That's not how it works. You would have said before the final, he is at his peak, and that he's the best Western player and the apex predator of Western League of Legends. So then fucking show some respect and keep that energy when he loses. So then how about this? He's now also going to get, I hope, proper recognition as a monster laner and farmer and very good team fighter. Now, by the way, he has the jungle, in my opinion, that unlocks the rest of his game. You saw the roaming. You see him roam down to top and the bot to go and help on counter ganks and to go and take kills himself and to pressure. He is the heir to Froggen, in a good sense. And by the way, funnily enough, even Froggen-esque, he resisted that himself. He has his own stubborn opinions. He thinks he's best at. That's exactly also for the Froggen mindset. He just focuses on different things than the other players focus on. Frodo and there, obviously, the longevity is amazing to still be so good after all those years. I think he's also quite frankly just shit of it, sick of everyone's shit. He's just sick of people telling him he's a choker. He's sick of people telling him, you'll never win now. You can only play weak side. And now he's also become a captain. He's realised after all these years, you know what, actually, some of these guys, maybe they are a little bit quiet, a little bit reserved in role. I'm going to be the captain. I'm going to be the one who flames here a little bit, but also as like the leader. I'll give the pat on the back and I'll tell you, come on, guys, don't fuck around. Let's win this game. We can stomp these motherfuckers. And he's just been there that many times. He doesn't fear death anymore. You saw by the way he played, like, he was going out on his shield in this final, win or lose, mate. Then you look at someone like Malrang. He's supposed to be this, like, almost brain dead, like, just crazy. He's inting, or is he doing a genius? Who knows? Maybe he doesn't. This mate looked like he understood they were going to follow him up. I mean, I don't know if he could. And he was just willing. This guy has the biggest heart in the world. I mean, it's fucking crazy the sort of engages this guy goes for on Jarvan, the re-engages. Actually, now he's even gotten smarter about sometimes doing the engage without wasting like their fucking E or whatever to get out. Like there are times he could get out of some of these like semi-fucked up engages. It's way better than before. That's just an instant int before in the past. And they don't leave him behind now. They're willing to sort of cover and protect him and follow up. Comp is the heir to Forgiven. I mean, you look at even the way he's winning these playoffs. Lucian, Caitlyn, pentakills. And then to do it in Sweden in front of Reckless, who isn't even in the LEC. I mean, mate, Forgiven must have been fucking loving that shit. It's the dream, right? It's what we never got to really properly get around to Forgiven. Trymbi, remember, he actually, in 2021, at one point looked like, maybe he's got some of the issues here because he's replacing Vander, super experienced player, probably shot calling elements. He became not only a legit lane monster and shot caller, he has a champion Ocean, which in my opinion is the hinge that makes Rogue, now they're willing to be ballsy, potentially better in draft than most of these teams. Because what he can do with his support pick means you can't ban him out, and he can absolutely change the whole comp. He can just go into a Lox or a Soraka or a Tahm Kench. Then he can just play all the other stuff as well. Like you'll see later, he'll probably next split pull out some really ballsy like Hylissang type picks. So you'll see him just smurfing that way as well. So I think people don't realise this guy is going to be a sleeper OP player. You could tell from the earlier in the split and the end of last year, but he's going to be one of the all-time great players from support in our region. Then how about Freddy122? I think this is the final evolution or the boss unlock for Freddy122. He already seemed like he'd got a lot of good drafting down. He knows how to get his team prepared, how to practice, how to pick the right champions for them. But in the playoffs, he didn't have sort of the little fucking, how you outcoach the enemy. You have the surprises, the little feints, the things in the draft that throw them off, the picks that make them adapt that maybe you didn't even want to keep going with anyway, but you can if you want to. And that, you saw these finals, play whatever you want. I'll play whatever I want in these finals. I don't have to pick the strongest meta anymore. So the significance, I think, is enormous. Like, people are going to think it's just a fluke. Dom's angle, basically, on Best Damn League shows, like, they won when they shouldn't, so until they do when they should, like, they still haven't proved it, right? Mine is, they gradually learned from their experiences, and this is them powering up to be a really dangerous team. First of all, back in the day, 2020, Rogue would just lose outright in the upper bracket, wouldn't they? Then they could win a series there, but then they'd play against the others. They'd probably lose the series early on. Just go to the lower bracket from like a top contender. But then they'd also each playoffs win one against a G2, a Mad Lions, a Fnatic. Fellow contenders, just not the champion. Then they made the final from the lower bracket. Almost won, but didn't, got reverse swept. Then they won the upper bracket final and made the final, but they lost. Now they won the final from the lower bracket. Right, what? Do they have to win the final from the upper bracket now for it to actually be legit? Does everyone else get to count all their championships? But it's not these guys for some reason. Okay, that's fucking shows how the expectations are different for Rogue. They have to apparently just be perfect. But here's the thing. That's where you're fucked around. Because you never let a team with the kind of versatility this team has in terms of carry balance, in terms of stylistic balance, who's aggressive, who's more the passive farming player, in terms of raw farming skill, in terms of the champion put at the right places. I think support and mid are the ones you just can't ban out right now. You never let a team like that get a taste for winning. Because once they get a taste for winning, I don't know if this is true, but I once heard by a guy who had like a pet tarantula. He was like, oh, it won't hurt you or bite you. But then as an aside, he was like, but the problem is if it ever does like bite you and like draw blood, it is actually possible in theory it can like sort of get a taste for that. Something. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? But that's sort of what it's like with these teams that seem like they're beaten down and passive and short. If they ever break through, Lord forbid. That's why, by the way, the real one I think that makes a team like Rogue take so long to charge up is losing actually the final last year in spring. Not 3-0ing that is what then I think put it in the back of their mind. Somehow maybe we do always lose. Someone does always get over us. We're unlucky. That's the classic one you think to yourself. Instead of looking the way you could have gambled and you could have been lucky and you could have been the guy who took a game they're supposed to win from them. Instead, you're thinking everything has to be perfect. I think that's the mindset they'd gotten into. So this reminds me, as people will know, of the great Astralis core in CSGO. So from 2014 to 2017, this core under teams like Dignitas, TSM, later Astralis, was a team that they would always be capable of winning and making the semis. And in 2015, they were capable of winning the tournaments, and 2017 too. The problem was, if they placed the other champion teams, or the other teams that were really clutch, so NIP, Virtus Pro, Envious, maybe even Navi, themselves didn't win that much, those teams could rely on Astralis core to choke. They'd play well themselves because they were confident playing against people without getting choked, but they also know they're going to get in their own head. They're going to play passively. If it's 14-14, they're going to lose the game and give us the chance to win it, and we're just going to make the aggressive players that put them under pressure, and then when they break, you win the game easy. You don't even have to win the game off tactics and skilling. You just make them mentally break, and then the game becomes easy. And they sort of just, it's like in the UFC, sometimes when people have been battered in a hard fight and they're in the championship rounds and they're gassed, sometimes the actual choke that the champion goes for isn't even an amazing choke that's indicative. It's just the guy's just mentally gone, and they sort of mentally just give up. They don't consciously, but they mentally just give up to the choke because they've got nothing left. Their spirit is drained. That's what used to happen to Rogue. But here's the problem. When Astralis flipped the switch, they dominated CSGO in 2018 onwards in a way that was so epic. And because it was so consistently excellent before that, now they were unbeatable. Now they were the final bosses. And people even used to say they made CSGO boring. That's how much they won and how dominantly they won over everyone. Now, I'm not going to go that far now, but I think Rogue can be that type of team, and I think they are. I actually think they will win another LEC title, at least with this core of players. I think, quite frankly, if they keep the whole 5-man lineup, I think they can become a dynasty. And in the next sort of year and a half, they can win 2 or more titles in that period of time. The only one I'm really concerned about is Malrang, in case of the meta going bizarre, or, I don't know, this style just getting, I won't say countered, but people just getting a little bit more wise to it. And sometimes you're going to have the splits like a Hillsang where you just int a little bit. There's maybe some of that can happen too. But aside from that X Factor, I think everyone else is really solid. I've got a lot of faith in them to do a lot. And I've seen enough that it's not just faith. I think it's been proven to some degree. So I think there's a good chance they can be in all the next finals. I think the regular split's theirs to win if they want to. And the evolution in the playoffs, by the way, is so key. Think about this. There's now a draft boldness and a gambling element. I think that's proven to be what's enabled them to be so sick. Players have stepped up. Trymbi, Larssen, Oduamne. And by the way, these guys are so sick of losing and crying their eyes out behind on stage or off stage. They're ready to stack championships, mate. Because I always say that to these guys as well when you're the second place guy all the time. It looks like because he's winning this champ. Like, look at that. Humanoid was up 2 championships. And then Cat's got this many. It looks like, well, can never catch them. No, you can catch them. Because what's brilliant about the way winning works for championships is it's binary. If they win, you don't win. So that's why they get ahead. But if you win, they don't win. So when Humanoid can't win this split and Larssen does, Humanoid has 2 championships and Larssen has 1 already. He's 1 away. So actually, you'll find out you can catch up to people real quick. As an org, you can catch up real quick. You saw that with Team Liquid in LCS, how quickly they overtook the C9s and the CLGs of the world when they were championships behind them before, right? So to me, I think if you look at who they are now, they now know they can win in a tough spot. They can win in maybe any spot. That's another thing that might be in their minds. They know how to do that. If you do nothing at times in the game, you just lose the game. You give the enemy a chance to win the game. They know that the opponent can't always be the one who sets the tempo and is the one who makes the moves. I think they fully believe in Malrang now. So whether or not he plays as well enough to win them, I think they will play around him correctly, and that will be their chance to win. Now, in terms of Worlds, I actually think this team can get out of groups. They're not like their favourite two necessarily, but I think you look at the teams they're playing against, I think they're certainly capable of. I think the way they played in the LCS finals, LEC finals, that'll look scary for some Asian teams. Like, that isn't the Western team you want to fuck around with, mate. Especially what they were doing in the draft, in my opinion. So I think it's potential, yeah, they can beat an Asian team here and there. I think they play any Western teams at any point in the tournament. I think they might even be a team that will win outright. Like, I'm very interested to see what those squads will do. Yeah, obviously I'm a bit high off the finals right now, but look at how everyone else played towards the end of the playoffs and towards the end of the LCS playoffs and all that jazz. Like, wouldn't you say this is the best Western team right now? Don't they look like it? I certainly think so. This video was kindly supported by Kill Your Inner Loser, Ahmed Hadjou, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Paul Villa, Travis Goff, Adam Ochs, Animosity, Bot Pounder 420, Hades, Jensen Goh, Kovacevicd, Pacy, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Torin, and as always, special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my shows? Would you like to ask a question in my Patreon AMA? Maybe you want teasers, find out who the next Reflections guests are or upcoming talk show guests. Do you want to take part in one of those long donated discussions with me? Well, if any of the above or more sound interesting to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Illuminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.